is right here in the middle.
Yeah, well, I think there's some truth to that. And so there's a level of, like it's the same thing as like we all want vulnerability in our relationships, but not on the first date.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to know that quite yet,
What are the other skills that you think we need to equip ourselves with based on the way that the world is heading? Because we're, like the calculator came along and we no longer needed to be able to do complicated maths.
Yeah, completely forgotten my times tables.
I can't spell anymore. So if I said to my friends, the most I can do is 9 times 9. That's like the top end of my range. But with spelling, it's the same. I get like half the word correct now with AI, and it does the rest.
But again,
So what are those skills?
I think it's all human skills. I think there
Human
needs.
skills.
So I think where the world is going to go, and at least this is where I'm taking a bet, is that as the end product becomes easier to produce, it's the humanity that's going to suffer. And unless we take personal accountability, both as individuals and organizations, to teach and learn human skills, they will disappear for all the reasons we're talking about. So how do I listen? How do I hold space? How do I resolve conflict peacefully? How do I give and how do I receive feedback? Those are two different skills. How do I have an effective confrontation? You pissed me off. Do I know how to approach you as a friend, as a colleague, without creating a massive fight or losing a friendship over it? How to take accountability, how to express empathy. These skills, these very, very human skills, are the things that we're already starting to see just with the internet and social media are suffering. And so I think AI will only exaggerate the loss of those skills, and those skills are more important than learning how to spell.
One of the concerning things was I heard Sam Altman, who's the founder of OpenAI and ChatGPT, launch this thing called WorldCoin a couple of years ago when ChatGPT really started taking off. And it has been closely tied to the concept of universal basic income.
Mm-hmm.
The overarching idea is that in a world where AI and automation eliminate many jobs, UBI may be necessary. WorldCoin is one way to help implement it. That was stated by the founder of ChatGPT, Sam Altman.
Yeah. I'll go back to my ironic statement before. Isn't it ironic that they want to do a universal income, a standard universal income, now that the knowledge workers are losing their jobs, but when the factory workers were losing their jobs, those same people were massively against these kinds of things. So, I mean, yes.
What happens to purpose?
It's ironic.
And meaning if we're being, because for anybody that doesn't know what universal basic income is, the idea is the government, the state, whatever, would pay you a certain amount of money every single
minimum
month.
salary.
So $2,000, $3,000, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Because they don't think many of us are going to have, there's not going to be enough jobs to go around. And I wonder what happens to purpose and meaning and pursuit and challenge and all these things in a world where we're just being handed money.
So we're not being given wealth. There's a difference. We're being given survival money, right? And so, we have to be very careful that says, everybody who's on welfare is lazy. That's not true, So we have to be very careful that just because we give somebody something doesn't mean that they cease to have ambition or purpose or drive. It's like somebody who makes a commission salary, works on commission, and they make just enough to pay their rent and buy food, and that's it. Like that's a loss. That's a lack of ambition. The cases, at least the people I've heard talk about it, they make a compelling case for it, especially in a world where there is plenty of wealth. But I don't know enough about it to make an argument for or against it, if I'm honest. But I do find it ironic that the Sam Altmans of the world are calling for it, given the fact that there's going to be so many job losses when it's jobs of their kind. And I also think that's funny. What's going to happen when Sam Altman's product gets good enough that he can lay off most of his staff? Just curious what happens.
He has made a point of having, I think it's 100 people or less in his company. He doesn't have a big team. And I think part of that is because when I heard his TED Talk a couple of days ago, he's saying, I think AGI is sooner than we think, actually. And I think we're going to have a fast takeoff, which means it's going to arrive very quickly and accelerate very quickly. So I think he's actually preparing not to.
Yeah, but what happens to the 90 people he lays off when he doesn't need 100, he only needs 10?
This is the question.
I'm just curious. I don't know. And this is why anybody who has an opinion about it, the answer is we don't know. But I think people react very differently when it's their job on the line, when it's their income on the line, when it's their pride, when it's their ego. I keep hearing from companies. I mean, we were talking about this before we turned on the cameras. You talk to, if you want a new website, I guarantee you, I don't care which company you talk to, they will all talk about how they're AI this, AI that. And you ask the question, are you using AI? Yes, we're using AI. We're doing it differently. We're the future, blah, blah, blah. And then you ask them for a proposal. It's going to look like all the other proposals from 2015, and this is how many hours it's going to take our people to program this and code this. And I was like, what happened to all the AI? Why is this slow and expensive when everything's supposed to be fast and inexpensive?
Because they're taking the margin.
Of course they're taking the margin. And they've got a lot of people doing things the old-fashioned way because the business model, people work very hard to predict. The status quo exists because there are people who benefit from the status quo. That's why there is a status quo. And it's like I said, everybody's into change, the future, until it's them that's threatened, or their income.
The billionaires that I know, the one consistent thing they've whispered to me about AI is that people are going to have a lot of free time. That's one of the things that's been really consistent. You're so right when you say that. When I asked you about the future of AI, you said, I don't know. The reason why I know that's probably the correct answer generally is because when I sat with the most advanced people in AI, whether it's Mustafa, who's head of Microsoft AI, now CEO of Microsoft AI, or people from Google, or the CEO of Google, or Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn, they all had different opinions, which made me to think actually the right answer is nobody knows.
The right answer is nobody. That is correct. And you always be aware of the messenger, right? Like you won't have anybody who owns an AI company talking doomsday scenarios. Yeah. It's not in their economic interest, even if they secretly harbor that. It's like people who used to run cigarette companies didn't smoke and they didn't let their family smoke. It's like, I remember visiting Facebook in the earlier days, and I went into the cafeteria and they had like picnic benches. And I was like, and they were telling me with pride how they have these communal eating areas to help people maintain relationship. And I was like, this is hilarious. You literally have a product that breaks relationships, and yet you understand enough to make people eat together at lunchtime so that they'll maintain relationship. I mean, the point being, if your economic interest, show me how someone's paid and I'll show you how they behave, One
of the scariest conversations I was privy to was a friend of mine who's a billionaire in London. He knows the CEO of one of the biggest AI companies in the world, who I can't name. And he said, by the way, what he tells me in private is not what he's saying publicly.
Yeah.
He said to me that what this particular CEO thinks is going to happen with AI is pretty horrific. Mm-hmm. And the CEO of this big AI company is totally cool with it. It's horrific what he thinks is about to happen. And then when I watch this guy do his online talks and give his opinion, he's so nuanced and everything will be fine and he's an AI optimist. Then I heard this scenario at this kitchen table in East London from his friend about what he really thinks, and it was chilling.
Yeah.
Actually, the lack of empathy.
Yeah. That makes sense to me.
The obsession with power was shocking to me.
Yeah. The obsession with power and money and all the rest of it. Yeah. But this is because the internet has done something really strange and challenged one of my theories head on. Right? So I talk about in an infinite game, Jim Carse, his theory, in an infinite game, there's no winners or losers, right? And so nobody wins, fast food. Nobody wins cars. Like General Motors, Ford, Vauxhall, they can all exist at the same time, right? And they'll have degrees of success or not success, but they can all exist simultaneously. Nobody's going to win. The exception is in the internet. In the like Amazon, it won. Yeah. Google for search, yep, they won, right? And if you start going down the big tech companies, there is only one. I mean, sure, there's competition, but not really, right? Walmart is making a run of it to threaten Amazon, but Amazon's still so damn big, All of these companies, there's only one. And that's not good. That you can't have winners in a category. And so this is why I think the race for AI is so aggressive, for AI dominance is so aggressive, and which is why people are not being careful, and which is why they're not putting controls, is because the way that tech seems to work is there probably will be one dominant standard, and then that's it. And the question is which one? Because I don't think it just seems to be the way it is, which is a very scary prospect to me, that the fact that we can have winners is a bad thing, especially if we pride ourselves on being capitalists, then there cannot be a winner. And there cannot be one that is so dominant that nobody else can even compete except for scraps.
What are your emotions when you think about AI and what's happening? Because I feel like the moment we're living in is a profound one and that we don't actually realize it. Because when these tools come out, OpenAI released yesterday 3.0, it's the best model ever. The day after, my life was the same. So we don't really notice it because we go back to work, our clients ask for the same thing, we have the same team members sat around us. It almost seems like the sand timer is rotated and we're on a clock. And it's a slow disruption of our everyday lives. Sam Altman the other day on his TED Talk 3 or 4 days ago said, in the short term, everything will appear the same. But in the long term, he goes, life is going to be completely different.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, and look at any technology like AI. It was kind of the same until it wasn't. And these are evolutions, not revolutions. Like there's a revolutionary bit, you know? Like I remember when the internet showed up and like brick and internet shopping showed up and all the technologists were like, it's the end of stores. It's the end of bricks and mortar. Like it's done. Like we'll never go to a shop again. Well, that didn't happen. Now, shops struggle to compete against internet, but that's a price thing, right? That's a business model thing. Yeah. But we like going shopping because again, all of these companies always forget, especially technologists, they all forget that the end user is a human being. And most of us don't fully understand everything. Even our iPhones, most people use a small percentage of all the capabilities of our iPhones. Most of us don't even know how to change the damn settings to make it do something we want, right? Neither do your kids. It's not an adult thing, right? It's not an old person thing. And there's a few people who get more out of it, and good for them. Some people use it just as a phone, fine. And it's a bell curve. So I think there will be a few people and a few companies that will get more value out of these things than the rest of us. But I think he's right. I think there'll be a revolutionary bit, and then it'll settle. I find this whole thing fascinating. When you ask me how do I feel, depending on what subject I'm talking about, absolute fear and absolute amazement. I have both and everything in between. When I think about how it affects democracy and the ability to make deep fakes and how it can manipulate people and their opinions to vote one way or another, I have real fear.
Yeah.
Right? When it comes to like productivity and the reshaping of business, technologists and people who were part of the internet revolution, they love to say, 20 years ago, 80% of the jobs we have now didn't exist. They love to say that, right? But when you ask them now, they seem to think I think it's the same, which is all those people who are going to lose those jobs in white collar jobs and knowledge workers, they're not going to not work. There's going to be new jobs. The IRS digitized a whole bunch of years ago, right? They got rid of all the accountants and they put in all the computers, right? Do you know how much money the IRS saved when it completely changed the way it looked?
No.
The answer is zero. Yes, they got rid of all the accountants and they need to hire all the IT people. So the workforce looked different, but it didn't get smaller. And so I think it's the same thing. We already know the massive, incredible amounts of energy that it takes for AI to work. Data centers that use up massive amounts of electricity like we've never seen in our lives. Like nuclear has to be a thing. There isn't enough coal or oil or solar or wind to power these things. It just doesn't exist. So nuclear has to be a thing. So go be a nuclear engineer. You want to get an advanced degree? I don't need you to be a coder. Coding was a thing go be a nuke. Because by the way, you got to be just as smart to be a nuke as you have to be so you're going to start to see that. You're going to see energy work. I just think the jobs will change. I don't think they're going to one thing I do disagree with, it's not like you're going to be a bunch of people walking around bored. I just think the jobs will change.
If there was a 10-year-old kid stood here now and the 10-year-old said, guys, what do you think I should focus on?
I would say two things. One is going back to human skills. Learn how to be a good friend to your friends.
Okay, how do I learn that?
You're going to really need that. How does a 10-year-old learn that, or how do you and I learn that?
Both.
A 10-year-old learns it, that when they go and have a play date at a friend's house, a smart parent takes away all the phones. I would hate that the 10-year-old has a phone in the first place, but if they do, take away all the phones and make the kids go play. That when they have a fight, the parents make them say sorry, go over to your friend's house and knock on the door and you're going to say sorry for the thing that you did. We're going to teach kids how to resolve conflict. We're going to teach kids how to pay compliments. We're going to teach kids how to take accountability. And these are all the skills of, well, what did you do wrong versus what, like, it's not like, it's not always the school or the teacher. Maybe your kid is disruptive, And so accountability is a real thing. And so I think if we teach those things to 10-year-olds and to adults, I think it makes for a better society. And the other thing is go learn a real skill. And I don't mean like that, prompting isn't a real skill. That's not what I mean. It's what I said before, which is it's the excruciating, like what makes great relationships great is not that you get along all the time. The best marriages, the best relationships, they're not absent of conflict. It's they know how to resolve conflict peacefully. By the way, I believe in world peace. I don't believe in a world without conflict. I believe a world in which we can resolve our conflict peacefully without the need to go to war to resolve conflict. This is why I like democracies, because democracies can solve conflict without bullets. So the human skills one, but I say a real skill, mean like go do something difficult. Build something, design something, imagine something, write something. And by the way, I'm totally fine even if you plug it into ChatGPT and say, tell me what's wrong with this. Your grammar's all screwed up, And like I said, I am smarter because I did it. The reason I'm more confident than when I was younger. And I think that's one of the things people talk about, you get wise with age, and you have more confidence as you get older. And yes, that's all true. And there's multiple reasons for it. But I think one of the reasons is the things that are happening to me now, I've gone through those things before. They were scary and kept me up at night the first time. And now I know how to do it. I'm not afraid of it anymore. And so I think what happens as you gain experience is you lose fear. And if ChatGPT or whatever AI product we use does everything for us, I think you just end up scared.
One of the things that I'm contending with at the moment, with this new technology that's arrived, being an entrepreneur, seeing this huge opportunity, thinking about the .com boom and all the great opportunity that created, people talking about the age of abundance and all these things, is I'm contending with the question on a personal level, which is, when is enough enough? And maybe this question is more pertinent now than ever in a world where creating stuff, building stuff, starting a company, launching a book, the cost of creating these things, whether they're good or not so good, has gone to basically zero.
Yeah.
So we can all theoretically from our computers now become movie directors and authors and software developers. And so with this possibility, opportunity, and the thing we need to deploy is intention. Like, what do I do? What is the thing that's going to lead me to happiness? Do I pursue all of these things and start building and creating and running off down that path to climb some ladder? Or do I take a second? When is enough enough? And as an entrepreneur who is in this moment, has a lot of resources, could roll the dice, could start all these new companies, could do all of these things. When is enough enough?
Now. Right, like there's something to be said for gratitude. And if you want to make it money, we know the data on this, right? I think once you reach, I can't remember the number, it's $70,000 a year of income. Like when you're talking about money, you can't buy happiness. Like it absolutely buys happiness up to a certain level, which is survival and then a little bit more, But once you reach a certain level, like there's no discernible increase in happiness that comes with money. Now, what money buys is options, What money buys is time, Those things are true. And you said it, like some of the people that you and I know who have made generational wealth, they're not discernibly happy. The ones that are happier were happy before they made the money. And the ones who thought the money would buy them happiness, or worse, the money took away their purpose, because when they made the money, they were driven by something that they accidentally made the money. They built businesses those were their passions and their cause. And then the money came and they weren't building the thing anymore. And, this is the difference. It's like, why, this is really interesting. It also gets to the question is, why is it that small companies are more innovative than big companies, right? Like you think about it, when you say what's the secret for innovation, well, you want to have resources, you want to have great people, and you want to have great market opportunities, and then you can have great ideas. Okay, so big companies have tons of money, they have all the best people, they have mature marketplaces that people generally know who they are, and they're the least innovative organizations on the planet, right? Then you have little companies that have no money, they're bootstrapping it, they don't have enough people, nobody knows who they are, and there's shit market conditions, and yet they're more innovative. And then big companies innovate by buying the little companies. You know, that's basically what happens. My exit, your exit, big company can't innovate, so they just bought you, right? Why is that? Why is that the rule? And so it goes directly to this, I think. I think the reason is because when you're small, your ambitions are bigger than the resources you have to achieve those ambitions. Every small business has outsized ambitions, like beyond objectively stupid. Like you look at what they have and what they've got, and they tell you where they're going to be, and you're just like, no. And yet some of them do. And I think the problem with big companies is their ambitions are well within their capabilities of their resources. In other words, their vision isn't big enough. And I think your vision has to be bigger than the amount of money, resources, and intelligence that you have to achieve that. And what that produces is creativity. And so it goes right back to this, which is if we can do so much with AI, then we need bigger visions. And so when you ask me, how do you find happiness? I think that we need to set our sights on things that are bigger than finite success. And I think we do need a gratitude practice, regardless of how little or how much you have. To be grateful for what you do have is a profound impact. I went through this with the LA fires. Right? I was very lucky that my house survived and I didn't have to get evacuated, but the evacuation zones were getting closer and closer. And two things happened that were profound that live with me now. One which is resolvable and one which is unresolvable. We were all obsessed with this app called Watch Duty, which is how we tracked the fires. It basically took all the publicly available information and put it in one place in a really amazing way. Right? Started by this amazing entrepreneur named John Mills. And we were all obsessed with Watch Duty. We all were on this app the whole time. And one of the things we were watching was the wind. Because if the wind shifted, it could profoundly impact your life. And I remember having this experience, like we were all watching the wind and the wind went away from me. And I thought, oh, thank God. And in that moment, I knew that somebody was looking at the app going, oh God, no. And it's not like service where I'll eat a little less so that somebody can eat more. Or I'll give up some of my income so that somebody has. It's not one of those. I don't want my house to burn down so somebody else's house doesn't burn down. And I had to live with this paradox of how unfair the world is, that simultaneously my relief and good news was somebody else's stress and bad news. And there was nothing I could do to change that. So that paradox it is horrible. And it was right in front of me. So that's one. But it's the second part, which is, the evacuation zones were coming a little closer, and they were one zone away from where I live. And we didn't know if we were going to be woken in the middle of the night with an alarm to evacuate. We didn't know. And so I had to go through the process of packing up my car and making my go bag. And I put as much stuff in my car as I could. And I had to, we all play that games like, if there's a fire and you have to run out and grab two things, what would you grab? I had to do that, right? And a lot of people in LA had to do that. Right? You actually had to make the decisions. What am I going to take and what am I going to leave behind? And I found myself bringing things that I never thought were important to me. And I found myself leaving things behind that I thought I would take. But the one thing that was amazing was stuff that I couldn't fit, but I still had love for, like my favorite painting in the world. It's just, I couldn't fit it in my car. I stood there in front of it and I said, thank you. And I said, goodbye. And it was like saying goodbye to a loved one. I hear this, somebody loses a parent. They go, look, it was awful. And, he suffered on his deathbed, but I'm glad I was with him to say goodbye. And it was the most amazing thing to have gratitude for something that I don't want to lose, but accepted that I might. And it's made me a lot more disconnected from my material things, especially the things I said goodbye to, because I've already said goodbye to them. I just sold some of my art for charity, and people said, "How did you love your art?" I'm like, "I know, it's like my art's like my babies." Like that, how did you choose? And I said, "I've already said goodbye to everything here. I did it months ago." And I think this idea of gratitude for what we have, but also like you're going to lose your parents. All of us will lose our parents. Hopefully, they don't never have to say goodbye to us. But if things go well, we're going to have to say goodbye to our parents. And we can't be angry about it. We want to say thank you for the times we had. And I think to have that level of appreciation for everything in our lives, how temporary all of this is, I think it makes you happier. I know it sounds, it makes you happier to just look at someone and be grateful. Failed relationships. You could be angry at the other person, or you can be grateful for the lessons they taught you or for the good times you had. And I think to change our minds to gratitude, and you can, it's a little bit, hippy-dippy to have a gratitude practice, and that's fine. If that's your thing, lie in bed every night or keep a journal and just say the things you're grateful for. But I don't know if it works without an evacuation zone approaching. I don't know. But to go around your home and just say thank you to the things that you like is a weird thing. How many of us, when was the last time you called a friend out of the blue and just said, thanks for being my friend? Like, hey, just wanted to call and just tell you I love you, just tell you thank you. And, that's all. No, just 2 minutes. Just want to say thank you for being my friend.
I think if I said that to one of my best friends, they'd think I was losing my mind or something, or that something was wrong. They'd be so concerned because it's such an unusual thing for me to have done.
Okay, so you can do it this way. So I had a guest on the podcast, and he came up with this thing that is so outside of my personality, but I'm going to try it.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Then you can do that.
Yeah.
I'm new to this. I know for years people have been like, you should have a gratitude practice and keep a gratitude journal. And I tried it. I was like, okay, I'm grateful for my sister, grateful for what for my family, grateful for my friends, grateful for the life that I live. All right, good night. All right, next day. I'm grateful for my sister, grateful for my family, grateful for my friends, and I found it so repetitive that I was like, is this worth it? Like, sure, like every now and then something was different and new. And I've come to the conclusion, like, if it's the same 3 things every single day, good.
I was thinking about this a lot the other day when someone asked me, think about all the people in your life and imagine if they were sick, and imagine if you had $1 billion in your bank and the $1 billion could cure their sickness. Like, who would you cure it for? Would you spend $1 billion to cure your girlfriend's sickness, your mother's sickness, your father's sickness, your whatever, even if it was the risk to them was low? And you would. I'd give every penny I had to cure an illness that my girlfriend had, even if the risk was low. And as I was thinking through that, I was like, but then if you look at my calendar and how I'm allocating my time against these individuals and against my priorities, there's a real imbalance here. And over the last couple of weeks in particular, I've been on a bit of a journey of realizing just how important 4 or 5 people in my life are. And how much I neglect them.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course. I mean, we only when it's you're right. Like, which is, if you say give $1 billion and you can cure this disease that affects 2 million people, 10 million people, you'd be like, I'll give some money, right? But if it was one family member, you would exhaust every resource. You would quit your job. You would do everything you can for
a 1% chance.
For a 1% chance. Yeah. And people do. They quit their jobs when. And like so many charities have been started because my father died, my mother died, my sister died, my brother died, and now I've devoted my life to right? Mm-hmm. Like literally that's the reason. And it's because it's personal. Of course, that makes sense. It's why are some entrepreneurs good and some entrepreneurs bad? Well, how personal is the thing that you're working on to you? Because then I only like the entrepreneurs that I love, I want to know that they are solving a problem that they struggled with or that somebody they love struggled with. Or something, if they read an article in a magazine and thought this is a great market opportunity, there is no passion there. That is driven by money and power only. I want to know somebody that it's so deeply personal to them that they will stop at nothing. They will run through a brick wall and find every creative solution. And it goes right back to the small company versus big company. It's passion and a vision that is bigger than the resources that I have. Which, I had a conversation with somebody recently actually, where they wanted to, it was a business problem, and they wanted to change the goals. And I said, we can't just change the goals because they're difficult. So we might miss the goal. It's true. Yes, we have a very aggressive goal, and the likelihood of us hitting it is incredibly low, but why would we lower it? And they said to me, I don't like to fail, they said. I don't like to fail, and I know you don't either. And I said, that's where you're wrong. That's where you're wrong. I have spent most of my life a failure, and I'm very comfortable being a failure. And I think of myself not as a success. I think of myself as a failure. And that's because my ambitions are bigger than my skills or my ability to achieve those ambitions. And so almost everything I've done, with a couple of exceptions, have fallen short of what I had hoped for. I'm very comfortable with that. Because failing at 80% is really much better than succeeding at 30%. And I think this idea of fear of failure and embracing failure, I don't want to fail, but I think it's important to have dreams that are beyond your skills or your resources, because that's where creativity comes from. That's where resourcefulness comes from. When you go, how am I going to figure this one out? And you told me the stories of your own team. It's the resourceful ones. And now we go back to AI. AI is not going to figure that out, right? There's data on this. I've actually never thought about this. This is good. There was a book called, it was The Wisdom of Crowds. I think it was that one. I think it was The Wisdom of Crowds by James Surowiecki, where people with experience knew what to do versus people who were just trained. So I'll give you the example. And again, I might have the book wrong, but I remember the case. So there was a bunch of firemen fighting a fire in wildfires, right? And the wind picked up and the fire was coming really fast towards these firemen. True story. And they all started running for their lives as this fire was approaching them unbelievably quickly. But the problem was, if they looked ahead, there was a small hill, which means you're going to slow down because you can't run fast up a hill. And this fire is coming fast, right? The senior guy on the team started screaming, "Get down, get down, get down." And they all ignored him. They were all running for their lives. And he just stopped running and got down and put his hands over his head and just lay in a ball. And the fire was going so fast that it blew right over him.